Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we take the monstrous stacks of sources you send us, the research, the articles, the internal reports, and distill them into the pure essential insights you need to be truly well-informed.
Yeah, and today's stack was, well, it was a big one.
It was. Today, we are attempting to chart the territory of a corporate giant that is so vast, so interwoven with the fabric of American and increasingly global life, that you interact with one of its many arms almost every day, whether you realize it or not.
That's a perfect framing.
Yeah.
We are undertaking a deep dive into Comcast Corporation. And when you look at the scale of this entity, you realize we aren't just discussing a cable provider.
Not at all.
We are looking at a multinational mass media, telecommunications, and entertainment conglomerate whose reach dictates everything from, the speed of your internet connection to the movies playing in theaters and the shows streaming on your smart TV.
And when we talk about reach, we are talking about serious global corporate gravity. The sources paint a picture of an unrivaled footprint. As of 2023, Comcast was ranked 51st in the prestigious Forbes Global 2000.
51st. I mean, that puts them in the absolute top tier of international corporate powerhouses.
So let's put that in context just in the telecommunications space.
Right. So purely by revenue, Comcast is the fourth largest telecommunications company globally.
Number 4.
They're trailing only giants like AT&T, Verizon, and China Mobile. So they are operating in a league where the scale is measured in nation states, not just cities.
I want to focus domestically for a second because their identity here in the U.S. is even more entrenched. I mean, the numbers are just staggering.
They are.
They are the single largest home internet service provider in the United States, period.
The biggest.
They are the second largest cable TV company and the third largest pay TV company. When you look at their ecosystem, Xfinity for residential distribution, NBCUniversal for content creation, and Sky Group for that global media reach, you realize they control both the pipe and, well, a lot of the water that flows through it.
And that's the holy grail, isn't it? Controlling both content and distribution. It's a level of vertical integration that Comcast achieved decades before its rivals, really cementing its role as an essential gatekeeper.
To give you a taste of the raw financial muscle underwriting all this power, we looked at the 2024 financial snapshot. These numbers, I think, explain why they can compete for assets like Sky or NBCUniversal.
Just massive.
We're talking about U.S. $123.7 billion in annual revenue, an operating income of U.S. $23.29 billion. And get this, total assets weighing in at a colossal U.S. $266.2 billion. That is the engine we are dissecting today.
So our mission, therefore, is twofold. First, to track the seemingly impossible trajectory of this growth. How did they get from, 12,000 customers to a $250 billion empire?
And second, we need to examine the consequences of that power. The unique corporate structure that allows for this incredibly concentrated control and the persistent, intense public criticism and regulatory battles that just seem to follow them everywhere. Okay, let's unpack this history, because the origin story is utterly captivating when you hold it up against their current scale.
It really is.
The beginning is surprisingly humble, far from the gleaming towers of Philadelphia. It all starts in Tupelo, Mississippi, in 1963.
That's the geographical anchor. The company was founded by Ralph J. Roberts, working alongside his longtime business partners Daniel Aaron and Julian A. Brodsky.
And they purchased a tiny fledgling operation called American Cable Systems.
Tiny is the word.
And the cost, a mere $500,000. That $500,000 was the literal seed money for a corporate structure whose assets are now worth over $250 billion. I mean, it just boggles the mind.
It does. And what did they purchase for that money? It was incredibly modest infrastructure. American Cable Systems served a tiny local base of just 12,000 customers.
12,000.
And it provided access to a paltry 5 television channels. It was a pure local utility in a rural market. But Roberts and his partners weren't looking at local utilities. They were looking at the future of mass communication.
We see that ambition reflected immediately in their early diversification moves. They weren't just focusing on getting more channels to those 12,000 customers.
No, not at all.
In 1965, they bought the Comcast Corporation of America. What even was that?
So Storecast specialized in in-store product placement and point-of-sale marketing within supermarkets. So right away, this shows an early understanding of the intersection between media and commerce.
So they're thinking about ads and placement from day one.
Pretty much. And they followed this up in 1968 by acquiring their first franchise for Muzak.
The background music company.
The one and only. The company synonymous with background music played in commercial spaces. This was media distribution, but applied to the environment, not just the TV screen.
So from day one, their DNA wasn't just cable. It was more like integrated communication services.
Exactly. They were combining physical distribution, the wires, with various forms of ambient and retail media services. It was a proactive realization that their core competency was connecting information and entertainment to consumers, not simply delivering broadcast signals.
The company was formally consolidated and reincorporated in Pennsylvania under the name Comcast Corporation on March 5, 1969. And within just a few years, they took a major step toward external funding.
Yeah, in 1972, they executed their initial public offering, the IPO listing, on the NASDAQ Q exchange.
What was their valuation at that point?
At that moment, their total market capitalization was $3.01 million.
$3 million. That valuation tells you they were still a small player, but now they had access to growth capital.
Which they put to use immediately.
And here's where the content revolution begins, and Comcast had a front row seat. We're talking about the 1977 milestone.
A huge one. That year, HBO was first launched on a Comcast cable system in western Pennsylvania. They ran a 5-night free preview targeting about 20,000 customers.
This was a critical experiment for the entire industry, wasn't it? Testing whether people would actually pay extra for premium non-broadcast programming.
It was everything. And the results were decisive.
How good were they?
They were stunningly good. They achieved a 15% sign-up rate immediately following that free preview.
15%. Just like that.
This wasn't just a win for Comcast. It was a massive proof of concept for the viability of the entire pay television model. The idea that people would subscribe to content that was specifically created and distributed outside of the 3 major broadcast networks.
The 1980s then became their consolidation and expansion phase. They needed scale to compete, and they found it in 1986.
That's when they bought a 26% stake in Group W Cable. This single transaction immediately doubled their total subscriber base, pushing them past the 1 million customer mark.
So overnight, they go from a big player to a huge one.
That's right. Scale was always the priority.
They also continue their diversification. That same year, 1986, they became a founding investor in QVC, the Quality Value Convenience Home Shopping Network.
Shelling out $380 million. That's a massive amount for the time.
It is. And then, I think this is really prescient, in 1988, they made their first major foray into mobile communications.
Yes, acquiring American Cellular Network Corporation for $230 million. This demonstrates a consistent, long-term strategic interest in providing connectivity outside of fixed lines.
A full 2 decades before Xfinity Mobile was even conceived.
Exactly. It proves they understood, even back then, that the future lay in ubiquitous communications.
The 1990s truly marked the point of no return. This is the era where they transitioned from a very large cable operator into the strategic, aggressive conglomerate we know today.
And this decade is also defined by the leadership transition to the next generation of the Roberts family.
Right. In February 1990, Brian L. Roberts, the founder's son, succeeded his father, Ralph Roberts, as president.
And the new era was marked by a relentless focus on rapid scaling through acquisition, just one after another.
And the pace was dizzying. By 1994, after buying McLean Hunter's American division for $1.27 billion, Comcast shot up to become the 3rd largest U.S. cable operator.
Serving approximately 3.5 million subscribers at that point.
But they weren't stopping there. The very next year, 1995, they bought the cable operation of E.W. Scripps Company for $1.575 billion.
Pushing their subscriber count up to 4.3 million. These were methodical, market-by-market consolidations designed to achieve massive bargaining power with content providers and equipment manufacturers.
And speaking of methodical, the end of the decade saw them cementing control over their home turf, Philadelphia.
Yes. The 1999 purchase of Lenfest Communications was key locally. Lenfest was the 9th largest cable operator nationally, but crucially, they dominated the greater Philadelphia region.
So this wasn't just about adding subscribers.
No, this brought in 1.3 million subscribers, but more importantly, it consolidated Comcast's absolute control over the entire local market. That's how local monopolies are built, by systematically swallowing the competition.
But they weren't just focusing on traditional cable. They were keenly aware of the emerging digital frontier.
Absolutely. Their first move into internet connectivity came in 1996 with the launch of the at-home network. And get this. In 1997, Microsoft, then, at the absolute height of its power, invested a staggering $1 billion in Comcast.
$1 billion.
That's from Microsoft.
That was a huge validation of Comcast's strategic importance in the distribution ecosystem. It was a signal that the future was broadband.
They also quickly moved to control content. The 1997 deal gave Comcast a 50.1% controlling interest in E! Entertainment Television, shared with the Walt Disney Company.
This was an early signal that the future involved controlling both the content and the wires that delivered it. You can see the strategy forming piece by piece.
It's also important to acknowledge their financial discipline during this explosive growth period. While they were spending billions on acquisitions, they were also strategically shedding assets to manage debt.
Right, between 1998 and 1999, they sold their UK division to NTL for $600 million and their cellular division to SBC Communications for $400 million, which effectively eliminated $1.27 billion in debt.
So they were pruning the non-core assets to prepare for the next level of mega deal. They were clearing the decks.
That next level arrived right at the turn of the millennium. The move that truly defined their distribution power in the 21st century was the acquisition of AT&T Broadband.
This was the pivotal tectonic shift. In 2001, Comcast announced it was acquiring the assets of AT&T Broadband, and this wasn't just a big player.
No, AT&T Broadband was the largest cable television operator in the nation at the time.
The biggest fish?
And the price tag?
$44.5 billion.
That seems insane just for wires, but what did that acquisition strategically unlock beyond just the subscriber numbers?
It unlocked immediate, unparalleled scale and leverage. By November 2002, Comcast became the undisputed largest U.S. cable television company, commanding over 22 million subscribers.
22 million.
And crucially, the deal also included AT&T's advertising wing, which Comcast immediately rebranded and scaled up, launching Comcast Advertising Sales, now known as Effective V. This created a new, massive revenue stream built on their distribution dominance.
A few years later, they doubled down on this consolidation strategy with the Adelphia cable carve-up.
Yeah, Adelphia had gone bankrupt, and Comcast partnered with Time Warner Cable for a joint acquisition of those assets in 2005 for $17.6 billion.
So they split the assets.
They did, but the strategy here wasn't just about adding customers. It was about optimizing geography. Comcast and Time Warner Cable actively swapped subscribers afterward, ensuring that each company controlled larger, contiguous geographic clusters.
So they were literally trading customers to solidify regional monopolies and reduce competition within those areas.
That's exactly what it was. It streamlines operational efficiency and gives them maximum pricing power. It's a textbook strategy for maximizing the value of a regulated infrastructure business.
And before we move on, we have to note the abandoned $54 billion hostile bid for Disney in 2004. This was just a breathtaking display of ambition.
Oh, it was audacious.
Had they succeeded in buying Disney, including $12 billion in assumed debt, they would have instantly created the world's largest media conglomerate.
Even though the bid was pulled, it was a profound signal to the market. Comcast was no longer content being just a pipe. They wanted to own Hollywood, too.
And that failure, it seems, just set the stage for their next big move.
The failure of the Disney bid simply served as practice for the biggest, most defining acquisition of their modern history, NBCUniversal.
Let's unpack this, because this transaction fundamentally changed the identity of the company. The negotiations started in late 2009 with General Electric, which then held the majority stake in NBCUniversal.
Right. GE was looking to get out of the media business. The initial deal structure was crucial. Comcast acquired a controlling 51% stake. They paid $6.5 billion in cash and assumed $7.3 billion in programming commitments.
So it wasn't just acquiring a company.
No, it was vertically integrating a distribution empire with a massive content engine.
What exactly did they get in that deal?
They gained control of the crown jewel, the NBC television network, one of the original big three U.S. broadcasters. They got a huge portfolio of highly profitable cable channels, including USA Network, Sci-Fi, and the foundation of MSNBC.
And, of course, the studio.
And the legendary Universal Pictures film studio. The deal was officially completed in January 2011 after a rigorous FCC approval process, and it transformed Comcast overnight.
And they didn't wait long to cement full control, did they?
Not at all. They quickly exercised their option to buy the remaining 49% stake from GE in 2013 for approximately $16.7 billion, making NBCUniversal a wholly owned subsidiary.
That's a huge commitment.
An undeniable one. And in December 2012, they adopted a new corporate logo that prominently featured the iconic NBC peacock, signaling that content creation was now central to the very identity of the corporation.
That new direction continued to accelerate in 2016 when they focused on family content and IP.
That's the acquisition of DreamWorks Animation for $3.8 billion. This brought major, bankable intellectual property into the Universal filmed entertainment ecosystem.
We're talking about titles like Shrek, Kung Fu Panda, Madagascar.
Exactly. These aren't just movies. They are franchises that feed the theme parks, the streaming service, and merchandise, creating a powerful synergy. They also acquired classic media in that deal, giving them rights to long-standing IPs like Felix the Cat and Casper the Friendly Ghost. It was a pure IP play.
So NBCUniversal gave them content. The next phase was expanding their geography, but not without hitting some major regulatory roadblocks first. We have to discuss the colossal failure of the $45.2 billion Time Warner cable acquisition attempt in 2014.
This was perhaps the highest-stakes domestic deal they ever attempted, and its failure remains a benchmark for antitrust concerns in the U.S. media market.
Had they succeeded, they would have added major metro areas like New York City, Los Angeles, and Dallas to their existing footprint. It would have been
Insurmountable dominance. That was the fear.
What were the critical concerns that ultimately killed the deal? What did the regulators say?
Well, the concerns boiled down to a fundamental issue of vertical integration. Regulators feared the combined entity, the nation's largest ISP, plus the owner of NBCUniversal content, would possess just too much leverage. Critics feared they could unfairly leverage content against competing distributors, like streaming services or smaller cable providers.
I want to dig into one technical point here that the sources raise. The fear of increased negotiating power, especially regarding rebroadcast fees and peering agreements. Can you clarify those terms for us?
Absolutely. So rebroadcast fees are what cable companies must pay broadcasters like NBC to carry their content. If Comcast owned both, they could demand lower fees from their own distribution arm, effectively costing them less than their competitors. It's a built-in advantage.
And peering agreements.
Peering agreements are even more critical. These are the traffic exchange agreements between large internet service providers, or ISPs. As the largest ISP, a combined Comcast-Time Warner could potentially dictate terms to content providers, think Netflix, or even rival ISPs regarding how much they pay or what connection speeds they get.
So they could make life very difficult for a competitor.
They could create a major barrier for anyone challenging them. It sounds like the government decided, no, you cannot be the essential gatekeeper for both the content and the internet.
That's exactly right. The FCC recommended the case go to a hearing before an administrative law judge, which is regulatory language for this deal is dead.
So Comcast withdrew the bid in April 2015 rather than face years of legal scrutiny.
That failure didn't curb their appetite, though. It just forced them to look abroad, which brings us to the dramatic Fox-Sky bidding wars of 2017 and 2018.
This was a corporate drama worthy of a movie studio they own. Comcast initially tried to purchase a large chunk of 21st Century Fox assets, the film studios, the cable networks. At the same time, Disney was bidding for them.
They were trying to fight on two fronts.
Right, build content and distribution simultaneously. But when Disney countered with an enormous higher bid for the Fox assets, Comcast executed a brilliant strategic pivot.
They dropped the Fox bid.
They dropped their bid for Fox entirely to focus intensely on acquiring Skypal. Sky was massive, Europe's largest media company and pay TV broadcaster. Comcast was already a partial owner, and they decided to go all in against Fox, which was acting as a proxy for Disney.
The bidding war was sensational, right?
Yeah.
It ended in this unprecedented three-round auction.
It did. And Comcast successfully outbid Fox in September 2018, raising its final offer to a colossal $40 billion, or $22.57 a share.
And that acquisition of the entire Sky Group gave them what?
It gave them 23 million subscribers and immense operational reach across key European markets: the UK, Ireland, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Italy. This cemented Comcast as a truly global media entity.
What's fascinating, though, is the immediate aftermath of that enormous spending spree. It wasn't all smooth sailing.
No, the sources confirm that despite the massive price paid, the acquisition has been financially challenging. Sky has faced significant difficulties, including operating losses doubling in 2023, and Comcast has had to write down its value by nearly 25%. It shows that even for a company with this kind of capital, global expansion comes with massive risks.
Finally, jumping to the very immediate past, the sources document the intense, unsuccessful activity surrounding Warner Bros. Discovery in 2025. This shows the hunger for content control is still raging.
Comcast was very active here. They contracted Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley about a possible bid to merge Warner Bros. Discovery's studio and streaming assets with NBCUniversal.
So this was another attempt at massive consolidation.
Exactly. It was a complex, high-stakes moment in the middle of the streaming wars, competing against Netflix and Paramount.
But they ultimately launched out to Netflix for the streaming and studio assets.
Yes. Comcast CEO Mike Cavanaugh publicly described their bid as light on cash compared to the rivals. It confirms that even with $266 billion in assets, the cost of content consolidation in the modern market is astronomical, and sometimes even Comcast has to walk away.
Now that we've tracked a timeline, let's look at the result. The three pillars of the Comcast ecosystem today. It's built on distribution, content, and international reach.
Starting with the foundation, the domestic communication business. Comcast Cable, universally known by its residential brand, Xfinity.
This is the core engine.
It's the core engine, providing cable television, broadband internet, and home telephone services to millions.
But Xfinity isn't just residential, right? It's bigger than that.
Far from it. Xfinity includes Comcast Business, which serves small to medium-sized operations, and the Comcast Enterprise brand, which focuses on Fortune 1000 companies. This business segment represents the essential infrastructure component of the whole empire.
And a crucial expansion in this division was the launch of Xfinity Mobile in 2017.
Xfinity Mobile is key to their bundling strategy. It's an MVNO, a mobile virtual network operator.
Meaning they don't own the cell towers.
Right. They lease network access from Verizon Wireless. This allowed Comcast to offer the full quintuple play of services: cable, internet, phone, mobile, and home security.
So they can bundle everything a consumer might need under one massive monthly bill.
And that drastically reduces customer churn. Once you're in that ecosystem, it's very hard to leave.
Moving to the content side, we have the behemoth that is NBCUniversal. This is far more than just a broadcast network.
Oh, it's an integrated powerhouse. On the film side, you have Universal Pictures, DreamWorks Animation, Illumination,
Responsible for the incredibly profitable Minions franchise.
and Focus Features for more prestige films. In television, they control the flagship NBC network, the Spanish-language Telemundo network, and a huge array of cable channels.
That cable lineup is essential. It includes Bravo, E, Sci-Fi, CNBC, and the network previously known as MSNBC, which is now being transitioned to MS Now.
And you can't forget the physical, massive revenue generators like Universal Destinations and Experiences, the theme parks.
The theme parks are incredibly important. They represent steady, high-margin revenue and offer invaluable synergy with the film studio.
Absolutely. They allow them to monetize IP through physical experiences. While they took a huge hit during the pandemic, with theme park revenue falling 81% in late 2020, they rebounded quickly and represent the future of stable, experience-based income.
The streaming anchor for all this content is Peacock.
Peacock is their main video-on-demand platform, and Comcast is actively integrating it into their distribution structure. For instance, the 2024 announcement of Xfinity Stream Saver.
What's that?
It's a bundle combining Peacock, Netflix, and Apple TV Plus for Xfinity customers. It shows them leveraging their distribution power to make their streaming service the default option for their broadband subscribers.
Internationally, we have the Sky Group, the largest media entity in Europe.
Sky serves 23 million subscribers, offering programming via satellite and their Internet Protocol television, or IPTV, systems.
Things like Sky Glass and SkyStream hardware.
Exactly. They dominate key markets like the UK, Germany, and Italy. It's a massive, complex operation. It is worth noting that they had planned to launch the international news channel NBC Sky World News in 2020, but the entire project was aborted.
Why was that?
Mainly due to pandemic-related disruptions and strategic realignment, though NBC News now continues to expand internationally on its own.
I want to spend extra time on their streaming defensive strategy, the Xumo evolution, or the free ad-supported streaming television, the fast pivot. This is crucial for their future as people cut the cord.
It is absolute central. Comcast acquired the fast service Xumo in 2020. They recognize that while people are dropping linear cable, they are still looking for organized, free content funded by ads.
But the big move was the joint venture.
The most critical move was the 2022 joint venture with Charter Communications.
Tell us about that.
They combined their streaming assets devices like Xfinity Flex and X-Class TV with Xumo to form a unified, next-generation streaming platform. The result was a mass rebranding. Xfinity Flex became the Xumo Streambox, X-Class TV became Xumo TV, and the FAST service is now Xumo Play.
So it's a defensive strategy.
It's designed to ensure that even if you drop cable TV, you still use Comcast hardware.
Allowing them to remain the gatekeeper for streaming and monetize you through advertising. So if you're a cable subscriber cutting the cord, they want to seamlessly transition you to a broadband-only customer who still gets their content and sees their ads via their hardware.
It's a way to maintain market gravity. It maximizes the lifetime value of the distribution relationship.
This strategic evolution leads directly to the single biggest organizational change on the horizon. The planned spin-off of a new entity, Versant, scheduled for 2026. This is a massive realignment for the company's future.
This restructuring, which they intend to execute as a tax-free spin-off, is a clear attempt to differentiate between high-growth assets and, well, the legacy linear assets. They are preparing the core, high-value engine for the streaming era while shedding some of the declining traditional cable networks.
Okay, let's break down who gets what, because this clarifies their strategic thinking.
Yeah.
What stays with the core, powerful NBCUniversal?
NBCU keeps the growth engines. The over-the-air NBC network, Telemundo, the entire Peacock streaming service, the massive theme parks division, all filmed entertainment, and the indispensable news and sports divisions.
And they're also keeping one specific cable channel.
Yes, they also strategically retain the Bravo channel.
Wait, why keep Bravo, which is a cable network, while spinning off all the others?
Because Bravo is a specific high-profit asset with a loyal, high-value female audience. It remains a stable, profitable, linear property, and critically, it feeds a huge amount of unscripted content directly into Peacock.
So it's about synergy with streaming.
Exactly. Retaining Bravo ensures NBCU keeps a key, high-performing cable asset tied to the future of its streaming platform.
That makes strategic sense. So what assets are moved into the new, separate Versant entity?
Versant will receive the majority of the U.S. cable networks that are facing linear decline and have lower synergy potential with Peacock. USA Network, CNBC, Oxygen, E, and Sci-Fi.
And MSNBC is changing.
Yes, the current MSNBC will be renamed MSNOW and moved to Versant. They will also receive digital assets like Fandango, Rotten Tomatoes, and Gulf Now.
So this is essentially placing the challenging traditional cable properties, which still generate substantial cash flow but face inevitable decline, into a separate vehicle.
That's it. This restructuring signals a deep awareness that the future is less about traditional cable subscriber fees and more about IP and streaming, and they are ensuring their most valuable assets are insulated from the decline of the legacy business.
The immense scale and complex business structure we've just detailed is, however, governed by a surprisingly simple, centralized mechanism. This brings us to the unique corporate power structure that draws immense scrutiny.
And that power, as our sources highlight, rests squarely with the Roberts family, specifically Chairman and CEO Brian L. Roberts, the son of the founder. It is a striking example of concentrated control in a publicly traded company.
It's startling because it flies in the face of conventional corporate governance, where ownership usually equals control. Brian L. Roberts, according to filings, owned only about 1% of the equity interest in Comcast.
Just 1%. He's not the majority shareholder by capital.
So how does he maintain effective control over Comcast's every step, as one legal expert noted?
Through the existence of Class B supervoting shares, Roberts owns or controls all of these supervoting shares.
Or what does that mean in practice?
This structural arrangement is designed to give him an undilutable 33% voting power over the company. To give you an analogy, he drives the corporate bus, even if he only bought one passenger seat. Everyone else is along for the ride, and his votes are weighted enormously in his favor.
So virtually no strategic decision can be made without his consent.
That's right.
When you have that level of concentrated, undilutable power, you have the ability to invest heavily in political influence to protect that empire. And Comcast has one of the largest political operations in the U.S.
The lobbying figures confirm their heavyweight status. In 2013 alone, Comcast spent $18.8 million on lobbyists,
$18.8 million.
making it the 7th largest lobbying budget of any individual company or organization in the country. And that doesn't even include the millions spent by the National Cable and Telecommunications Association, of which they are a leading member.
That's staggering scale applied to political pressure. They also leverage human capital very aggressively, too.
They absolutely do. The sources confirm they employ multiple former U.S. congressmen as high-powered lobbyists. This gives them immediate access and a deep understanding of the legislative process.
And then there's the PPAC.
Furthermore, the Comcast PAC, their political action committee, is one of the largest in the U.S., raising and distributing millions to federal candidates across the entire political spectrum. They hedge their bets, ensuring access regardless of who is in power.
Let's discuss some specific controversial actions enabled by this lobbying might, starting with digital copyright.
Right. When their content arm, NBCUniversal, is concerned, Comcast goes on the offensive. They spent roughly $5 million lobbying specifically for the passage of the Stop Online Piracy Act, SOPA, and the Protect IP Act.
These were hugely controversial bills.
They were. These were pieces of legislation that critics argued would fundamentally change internet architecture and censorship rules to protect major copyright holders. Comcast's effort demonstrates their willingness to spend massively to defend their intellectual property.
Then there is the fight against public options, the specific, aggressive opposition to municipal broadband.
This is critical for understanding their market defense strategy. Comcast and other cable companies have actively lobbied state governments to pass legislation that restricts or even bans municipal broadband services.
And these are public, often faster broadband networks built and operated by local cities.
Correct. And they fight this so aggressively because municipal broadband represents true, subsidized local competition.
So it's about protecting their turf.
Critics point out that these state-level restrictions, which the sources confirm have been passed in 20 U.S. states, serve only to protect the local monopoly status of companies like Comcast, ensuring that residents have few, if any, alternatives for high-speed internet.
Moving from legislative lobbying to direct political funding, the sources also highlight a controversial 2020 contribution to the Rule of Law Defense Fund.
Yes, in 2020, Comcast contributed $200,000 to this fund, which operates as a fundraising arm for the Republican Attorneys General Association.
And this organization was later linked to.
It was later linked to providing funding and support for the events leading up to the attack on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. It underscores that Comcast's influence network is vast and often touches highly sensitive and polarized political territory, requiring, very careful reporting of the facts contained in the sources.
We've mapped the power and the political influence. Now we must address the cost of that power. The persistent, public, and often toxic criticism that has defined Comcast's reputation for decades.
And let's start with the label no company wants. Comcast was repeatedly dubbed the worst company in America by the consumerists.
And they even got an award for it.
They earned the ignominious Golden Poo Award in both 2010 and 2014. That is an astonishing level of public enmity for a utility provider.
That criticism is overwhelming, rooted in customer service issues and perceived market abuse. How bad were the service ratings?
The American Customer Satisfaction Index, or ACSI, consistently ranked Comcast's customer satisfaction ratings among the absolute lowest in the entire cable industry between 2008 and 2010.
There's a paradox in that data, right?
There is, and here's where the deeper insight lies. The ACSI noted that over one specific period, Comcast's customer satisfaction eroded by a measurable 7%, yet their revenue simultaneously increased by 12%.
Wait, so they increased revenue while service got worse. That's the definition of market power.
That contradiction is only possible because of their market dominance. The ACSI concluded that because Comcast and other large cable companies face limited local competition, they have enormous pricing power and market gravity.
So they can financially thrive and raise prices, even when customers are profoundly unhappy.
Because those customers have no viable alternative, the customer is effectively trapped.
The sources provide vivid anecdotes about the internal corporate culture in 2014, with investigative reports based on interviews with over 150 employees, painting a really grim picture of the realities on the ground.
Yeah, employee accounts alleged that the corporate environment was obsessively focused on sales figures above all else. This often led to poorly trained technical support, unwarranted disciplinary actions, and internal systems that were so fragmented and complex that, as one employee claimed, the entire process makes good customer service impossible.
The goal, critics argue, was profit maximization enabled by monopolistic control, regardless of the customer experience.
That's the argument.
And beyond poor ratings, this has led to significant financial and legal penalties.
It has. The FCC levied a $2.3 million fine against Comcast for charging customers for unordered services and equipment. That fine was based on over 1,000 specific customer complaints.
And more recently, there was a major lawsuit in Minnesota in 2018.
Right. The Minnesota State Attorney General filed a lawsuit alleging systematic overcharges, the non-delivery of promised prepaid cards meant to attract new customers, and the adding of services without customer consent.
It was a comprehensive legal challenge to their sales practices. And what was the outcome?
The lawsuit was settled in 2020. The terms required Comcast to issue refunds to over 15,000 customers and provide significant debt relief to thousands of others. Critically, the settlement also required them to disclose the full amounts customers would be charged in their advertisements, addressing deceptive pricing.
Finally, let's revisit the net neutrality concern. Even when complying with current law, critics still worry about the potential abuse of their distribution and content power.
The worry is fundamental. Comcast owns the physical pipes, the ISP, and the valuable content from NBCU. Critics fear they could leverage their massive negotiating position to unfairly influence end-user connection speeds.
So potentially slowing down rival streaming services to make Peacock look faster and more reliable.
That's the fear.
Now let's pivot to their operational vulnerabilities. For a technology company of this scale, their cybersecurity history features some surprisingly high-profile and, frankly, embarrassing incidents.
These incidents illustrate that sheer size does not equate to invulnerability. Let's start with the almost unbelievable 2008 Comcast .net hijacking.
This sounds dramatic. What exactly happened, and how did a company this large get hijacked?
It wasn't complex coding, it was social engineering. On May 28 and 29, 2008, a hacker group called Cryogenics successfully hijacked the Comcast.net domain.
Oh.
They did it by making only 2 phone calls and leveraging a compromised Comcast email account to convince the domain registrar, Network Solutions, to change the domain's DNS settings.
So you build a $266 billion company, and the entire public face of your email and web services is hijacked by 2 phone calls.
Exactly. The attackers successfully redirected traffic, including webmail and voicemail, for about 5 hours, causing an estimated loss to Comcast of $128,000. The perpetrator was later caught and sentenced. It shows that the weakest link is often human, not technological.
Moving forward, the vulnerabilities extended to their smart home products, specifically the 2016 Xfinity home flaws.
Yes, researchers at Rapid7 disclosed severe flaws in the Xfinity home security system. They found that an attacker could use simple radio jamming techniques, effectively cheap, off-the-shelf equipment, to disrupt communications between the sensors and the central security hub.
And the worst part was the notification failure, wasn't it?
Crucially, yes. The system failed to alert the user when these communications were lost. So the homeowner believed their security system was active and monitoring their house, while in reality the sensors had been disabled via radio interference.
Leaving the home vulnerable without any resident knowledge. That's a massive failure of trust for a home security product.
Huge one.
And finally, we must detail the most significant recent cyber incident. The 2023 Xfinity Citrix Bleed data breach.
This breach was monumental in scale. It affected approximately 35.9 million Xfinity accounts. The cause was the exploitation of a critical known vulnerability in Citrix NetScaler software identified as Citrix Bleed.
What data was exposed?
It was wide-ranging, including usernames and encrypted passwords, which necessitated a mass password reset. But for a subset of those customers, much more sensitive data was exposed.
Such as?
For a subset of customers, the breach exposed dates of birth, contact information, and the last 4 digits of their social security numbers. This incident served as a stark reminder of the massive amounts of personal data Comcast controls and the enormous risk posed by managing such a vast digital footprint.
And the threat landscape continues to evolve, confirming that Comcast remains a target for the most sophisticated actors, as seen in the 2025 espionage reports.
Recent assessments by U.S. government agencies indicated that Comcast was likely among several major telecommunications providers targeted by Salt Typhoon, a cyber espionage group linked to the Chinese state. Whether seeking intellectual property, infrastructure maps, or customer data, a company that controls this much of the nation's digital plumbing is an obvious and consistent target for foreign nation-state actors.
This has been an intensive deep dive, tracing Comcast's trajectory from a 5-channel operator in Mississippi to a global content and distribution giant. We have established 3 definitive key takeaways that frame their current position.
First, the trajectory was fueled by relentless debt-financed expansion. Starting with the strategic acquisitions of scale, like AT&T Broadband, then the vertical integration of content with NBCUniversal, and finally the push for global reach with Sky Group. This M&A strategy created a unified structure.
Second, their vast market dominance has established them as the essential gatekeeper in the U.S. for broadband and cable. This allows them to leverage pricing power even in the face of widespread customer dissatisfaction, as that ACSI data clearly showed.
And third, that immense power is protected and guided by a highly concentrated governance structure, the Roberts family control via supervoting shares, which finances one of the most powerful lobbying operations in the country, often used to eliminate competition like municipal broadband. These factors, combined with recurring customer service and security issues, are the enduring challenges that define their public image.
Understanding Comcast is absolutely crucial for you, the listener, because the decisions made by this company, guided by that concentrated voting power, literally dictate the speed of your internet, how affordable your media access is, and what content you consume. Their operational strategy fundamentally impacts the modern information consumer in profound ways.
Precisely. And that brings us to our final provocative thought. Despite its reputation as a traditional cable giant, a reputation plagued by that Golden Poo Award, Comcast is rapidly attempting to adapt. We see this with their aggressive Zumo and fast evolution, their recent partnership with Starlink to provide connectivity to business customers in underserved regions, and most notably, the strategic Versant spinoff.
So given that Comcast's ultimate, decades-long goal remains the creation of the largest possible media and distribution conglomerate, and considering the inevitable clashes with antitrust regulators that doomed the Time Warner Cable deal,
How will this separation of its legacy cable networks into Versant, while retaining the high-growth NBC network, the guaranteed asset of the Peacock streaming platform and its major studios, fundamentally reshape its antitrust vulnerability and market power in the next decade?
is this a strategic move to genuinely insulate the most valuable high-growth parts of the company from the regulatory heat of its declining distribution business?
Or does it simply signal a strategic retreat that will weaken their overall leverage? It's a question of whether splitting the body makes the heart stronger or just more visible to competitors.
A question that will define the digital economy for years to come. That was the Deep Dive on Comcast.